Hello, welcome to Poetry Changes Lives, where poetry meets history with a thought for the day thrown in. Well, on this day in 1649, that's nearly 400 years ago, a terrible event happened in London. King Charles I of England was beheaded at Whitehall Palace. It was a cold day, and Charles wore two shirts so that the people might not see him shiver. His head was severed in one blow, whereupon, in the words of one observer, a groan as I never heard before and desire I may never hear again arose from the assembled crowd. Well, later on the head was sewn back on, and Charles's body was placed in a lead coffin. Oliver Cromwell, the man most responsible for the execution, visited the coffin and was heard to murmur the words, "A cruel necessity." Well, Charles's arrogance and belief in his divine right to rule had made him an impossible monarch to deal with, really. But his execution and the manner in which he conducted himself during it turned him into a royal martyr, and he asked for forgiveness for his executors. It was a fine position that he took. Well, you can imagine what the other kings and queens around Europe thought of that event. Seeing one of their kind executed by a popular revolution. And of course, the King of France, the same thing happened to him 100 years later, or slightly more, in 1789, wasn't it? The French Revolution. And indeed, the American War of Independence, the American Revolution of 1776. England was really ahead of the game when it came to revolutions, but they gave other people the idea and others followed through on it. Well, today's poem is by Andrew Marvell, a poet, a great poet really of that time, 17th century. I don't know whether he was at the actual execution of Charles I, but he wrote this poem describing the event, the execution. It's quite short. Here it is. He nothing common did or mean upon that memorable scene, but with his keener eye the axe's edge did try, nor called the gods with vulgar spite to vindicate his helpless right, but bowed his comely head down as upon a bed. Charles, as I say, didn't want any revenge taken for his death. However, following the Restoration in 1660, when the English monarchy was restored, Charles's son, Charles II, was brought back from exile. He pursued a relentless quest to bring the regicides to justice. The regicides were the 59 people, mostly members of Parliament at the time, who signed the death warrant for King Charles I's execution. And eventually he pursued them all, of those 59. Of them, 38 were captured and brought to justice. 19 of those were executed themselves, some very nastily, and a further 19 were imprisoned. Some had died in the few years that followed the execution. Some escaped altogether, but Charles II, the son of Charles I, who was executed, he was absolutely relentless in his pursuit of revenge. Well, today I will reflect on forgiveness, the virtue of forgiveness towards those who do me harm, because forgiveness is a much nicer, better feeling and action than revenge, and does everyone much more good. Thank you for listening.